Hey guys, it's your girl Carrie. Welcome back to my channel. We are starting up a new series today and it's going to be all about dip powder tips. So we're going to cover some of the most common issues that folks run into when they're dipping their nails at home, and I will show you how to troubleshoot them. So we're going to kick it off with one of the most popular subjects, and that is how to work with chunky glitters. So if your chunky glitters are looking chunky, I have got you covered. I'm going to show you how to take those chunky glitter dips and turn them to some beautiful, flat, non-bumpy, smooth looking nails. So if that sounds like something you're interested in, then stick around, we're getting into it. Okay guys, so like I said, this is going to be the first in a series of troubleshooting videos, and I don't really want to call them beginner videos because that's not really what they are. They're really more meant for specific issues that folks run into, and these are issues that people run into whether you've been dipping for 5 days or you've been dipping for 5 years. You know, sometimes it helps to learn something new that might help you change your nail game. So I don't know how many we'll do a month. We'll probably start off with 1 or 2 and we'll just see how it goes. But a lot of that will depend on you, because the more you come up with specific issues that you want some answers to, then the more videos we'll make. So it really kind of just depends on what kind of feedback I get from you guys. We're starting with chunky glitters because this is one of the questions that I get most often in my DMs, on my video comments, and it's still something I see asked a lot in DIY nail related Facebook groups. So, you know, that's kind of why we're starting with that, and I'm hoping that maybe, you know, by showing you my process, you might find something that you want to try yourself. So in this series, I'm not really going to be demoing the full mani. I'm going to be demoing the specific issue that the video is addressing. So in this case, I'm using these 2 dips today, but I'll only be showing you the chunky glitter application because that's what we're covering. So speaking of, these 2 dips are from Vivid Glam, and you might notice the lids are a little bit older on there, but that's because I've had these colors for a while. So we're going to be using Stronger Than You Pink, and then this beautiful chunky glitter called Flossy Fairy. So you can see it's full of chunky pieces and little circle glitters and shards, all kinds of fun stuff. So I figured it'd be a good one to use today for this demo. So I'm going to start things off here by showing you some comparison swatches. So this glitter dip right here is a chunky glitter from Vivid Glam called Reverie. And it's absolutely gorgeous, and I almost used it today, but I ended up going with the other one. But I wanted to show you these swatches anyway so you can see the difference. So on the left you have my typical application for chunky glitter, and then on the right you have your DIY dipper's typical application. So I want you to just take a look at these and see if you can tell right away the difference between the two. Alright, so let's take a look at the typical application first. And of course, everybody's different, so I'm just using this as a generalization. But most folks, you know, they like to do 2 dips of a glitter and then they like to do a clear dip. So this is what that looks like when I do that application method on the swatch stick. So as you can see, we've got clumps of the chunky glitter pieces kind of bunched up there in certain places, and then we have other spots that have less. And then once we turn it to the side, you can see that we have some lumpy looking areas. We don't have a nice smooth finish, and you know, honestly, all things considered, this isn't horrible, but it could be better. And not to mention that this application method does not bring out the true beauty of this chunky glitter. This swatch stick is the one of the method that I use. So, you know, as you can see, the chunky glitter pieces probably could have been placed a little bit better, but I was just doing a swatch stick, so I wasn't trying too hard. But you can see how much smoother it looks and how much flatter the glitter pieces look. And when you turn it to the side, you get a nice view of just relatively how flat this looks. And because the application method is a little neater and a little more intentional, you do get to appreciate the true beauty of the glitter this way. Alright, so let's take a look at the one I'm going to be using today. On the left we have my application method, and on the right we have your typical 2-dip application with the clear dip on top. And just to be clear, both of these do have a layer of clear dip on top, but you can see that once again we have a much smoother view from side on of the bottom one, which is the method that I use, versus the top one, which is your typical application. I think it's worth mentioning too that if you don't like that textured feeling on your nail, you're going to get a much smoother feel with the method that I'm going to show you versus your typical application, which feels a little bit more lumpy and bumpy on the finger. So if you're currently using the two dip standard method, there's nothing wrong with that. And if you like it that way, then more power to you. When I started, I definitely did some nails like that and they looked fine, but I just didn't appreciate them as much as I do with this newer application method I'm using. So that's what I'm going to go ahead and demo for you. Before we get into the demo, I want to address something. On the left here, we have Vivid Glam Co's Dream Cream, and this is a circle glitter, and I just want to point this one out specifically because anything that is super duper duper chunky, you may need 2 layers of clear over. It's pretty rare that I have to do that, and I have used this one, and honestly, I think I might have used 2 layers of clear. But there may be times where you just have something that is just absolutely so chunky that you need to use 2 layers of clear, in which case you would follow the exact method that I'm about to show you, but just include a second layer of clear. And keep in mind you'll need to brush off with that stiff brush between your layers of clear and wait till they fully dry before you do the next one. You're also going to need a different approach when you are using dip powders with large chunky glitter shapes, and then like this one from Soul Dips with these pretty fall leaves. You're definitely not going to want to use this for that because you're going to need to do something specifically with these large shapes that I won't be showing you in this video. However, I do have a video already demoing how to do these. So it uses Christmas trees, so obviously it's out of season right now, but I'll have it linked for you in the cards because no matter what the shape is, if it's a large shape, you'll be able to use that process to get a nice smooth finish. Alright, so onto the demo. Like I said, I am going to be doing my solid application off camera because this video's focus is on troubleshooting the chunky glitters. So the Stronger Than You pink, I'm going to go ahead and jump off camera and put that on my thumb, my pointer, and my pinky, and then we will work with Flossy Fairy on the 2 middle fingers. What a fun bubblegum pink, right? Gotta love it. So let's get into the demo of how I apply chunky glitter so that I can keep it nice and smooth. So the first thing I'm going to do is pour this into a cupcake liner. I never recommend dipping directly into jars when it comes to chunky glitters, just because it's going to be all bunched up. It's not going to do any favors. It's just going to make application more difficult. Alright, so the first thing I'm going to do here is stir a toothpick into this. So what I'm trying to do is to get the finer pieces to come to the top and the larger pieces to sink down towards the bottom. Because my first layer, I really want to focus on those smaller pieces to make a nice background layer. So I'm trying to just push some of these larger pieces out of the way. So while I do that, I just want to say that I know that there are multiple methods to achieve nice, flat, chunky glitter dip nails. I'm just showing you the method that I like to use. So please don't think that this is the right way. This is just my way, and maybe it'll work for you too. Alright, so just like usual, I'm going to go ahead and put on my dip base, and then I'm going to dip it into that well I've kind of made in the middle where I've pushed most of the bigger pieces out of the way. So what I'm trying to do is get kind of like a background layer here. I'm trying to get the smaller pieces, the flakes, the little iridescent things that aren't big and chunky. I'm just looking for a background layer. So after my dip, you can see I was moderately successful. I do have a few chunky pieces here, which I will just take my cuticle tool and gently kind of just push them right off, and that's it. Now, if you have 1 or 2 chunkier pieces on here, it's usually not a big deal, but if you have quite a few, you definitely want to kind of knock those off while your base is still wet so that you can just leave the smaller pieces and the iridescent pieces on there. Alright, so you can see after that first layer, I've got a nice little background here. Everything's still looking pretty flat, but I've got a nice layer to kind of help my chunkies on the top to kind of stand out. Alright, so I'm just going to repeat the exact same thing on the ring finger. Alright, now we're ready to go in with our second layer. So this time we're going to shake this liner a little bit to kind of bring some of the chunkier pieces back towards the top. So once again, I will go in with my dip base, put my regular layer of dip base that I normally would put on here, and then I'm going to dip into an area where I see that the chunky pieces are there, but they're a little bit more scattered out and not kind of all clumped up together. All right, so in this dip right away, you're going to see I have way too many chunky pieces. So we definitely don't want to leave it like that because that will be pretty difficult to smooth out. So I'm kind of gently pushing down what I can, and then I pick up my cuticle tool and immediately start flicking off these chunkier pieces because this is not going to do this glitter any favors. So anywhere where I have them bunched up, they're laying on top of each other, or there's two that are too close to each other, I will flick them off, or I will use my cuticle tool to kind of gently nudge them into a different place. So, you know, you're going to have to work with this, relatively quickly, but you have a little bit more time on this layer than you did the first layer because you have that first layer dip base down. This one is going to dry a little bit slower, so you have a little bit more play time here. But if it's one of those things where you're like, should I leave it or should I not, just flick it off because you can always put more back on by hand placing if you need to. All right, much better, right? So we're going to go ahead and dust off the excess like we always do, and then we're going to go in and do the same thing on the ring finger, and you'll see I pick up much less of the chunkier pieces on the ring finger. But look, take a look at this side on. Once you get that second layer kind of fixed and smushed out a little bit, it looks pretty flat. I mean, we still can improve upon this, but this is looking pretty good so far for 2 layers of a chunky glitter. All right, so here's our 2 layers done, and once again you can see just how nice and flat everything's looking, and you've got a nice view of the glitter because there's not a place where a bunch of the chunky pieces are really bunched up. It looks pretty nice. Alright, so this next step is going to be optional. It's going to depend on how well you picked up with your second layer and how even and colorful everything looks to you. In this case, there's a lot of white and iridescent in this glitter dip, but very few colored pieces. So I kind of dumped a little bit out on my tray there, and that's what I'm going to be using to kind of enhance what I've already got there by doing a little bit of hand placing. But like I said, if you got good enough pickup on your second layer and you don't need to hand place, don't. So all we're going to do during this part is pick up your dip base brush and just kind of dollop a little bit of base where you see a piece where you would like to have some colored glitter or whatever it is you're using in your chunky glitter. And then I like to kind of just dip the side of my tweezers into that dip base glob and use it to help me pick up the glitter. Some people like to use their cuticle tools for this, or an orange stick, or even a wax tool. Me, I just prefer using the tweezers. I find it much easier to manipulate and hold things. Like I said, that's just my opinion though. You use whatever works for you. Alright, so we're just going to continue doing that until we're happy with the chunky glitter placement. And be careful not to make these too symmetrical, which I had to stop and kind of move things and think about it a little bit because that's just my type A personality, is to always want to make things symmetrical. And that's actually not that pretty when it comes to chunky glitters. You don't want it to look too perfect. I mean, you want it to look a little whimsical and fun, so try not to be too like matchy-matchy with where you place them. Alright, so once you're happy with your hand placement and everything's looking pretty good to you, and again, you can still see we're looking pretty flat even after we added those additional pieces, then we're going to go ahead and get ready to dip into our clear. Alright, so I'm using one of my staple clears here. This is Skyline Soapworks Clear, and I do have a jar just for glitter, which is why you see all those glitter pieces in there. And that is something I do recommend if you can swing it. If not, then see if you can get one of those smaller little Beautycom jars or even a cupcake liner. Just pour it in there so that if you contaminate any of your clear, you don't end up contaminating the whole jar if you're using it for both glitters and for solids. So when painting on your base layer for clear, you want it to be a healthy layer. You don't want it to be too thin, but you don't want it to be too thick either. You want it to just kind of be right in the middle. And then once you get your base coat on, dip right into the clear and only do it once, only one time, because otherwise you're going to risk making your glitter look cloudy or there may be speckles in it. and we definitely don't want to dull the shine of that glitter. You'll know you got it pretty much spot on if you notice that shortly after you pull it out of the jar and clean up your cuticles, it already starts looking less powdery and starts to look more glass-like. So you can see mine there is already starting to absorb the clear powder, and it's already clearing up again. So that's what we want. Alright, so once we are done, I'm going to let this clear dry, and I'm going to cut out the wait time because I think it would be pretty boring if you literally just sat here and watched me wait for dip to dry. So I will cut that out, but I do want to mention it takes a couple of minutes for this to set up so that it's firm enough I can scrub it off. You need to wait until your clear doesn't feel like extremely tacky anymore before you go over it with your stiff brush. And I'm not really digging into this. I'm being gentle, but the bristles are going to do the work for me because they are stiff. So all it's doing is just kind of scrubbing off the extra clear here, and I'm not pushing down too hard because even though it's no longer extremely tacky anymore, it can still be moved. So if you dig in there really hard and scrub super hard with your stiff brush, you can actually pull up some of the clear, and again, that will lead to cloudiness and or speckles in your glitter, which nobody wants. And yes, if you were wondering, I will have a troubleshooting video for you just on how to fix those issues with your clear, but that's not today's. So once again, take a look at how nice and smooth and flat everything is looking after our clear dip. And it looks pretty good, but we can still improve upon this a little bit more. So what we're going to need next is some kind of plastic. So I have a little tiny plastic baggie here. I kind of have a stash of these, but you can also use a latex glove. You could use a sandwich baggie and just use a piece of it, or you could use like a finger condom. I've seen those on Amazon. I even have some of those, but I never end up using them for some reason. This is just kind of my weapon of choice for this part, but you're going to need something plastic-like to help push down your clear. Alright, so here's what we're going to do. We are going to place our activator very thoroughly on this dipped nail, and what we're trying to do is make sure we saturate all the layers here because we've got a couple layers of glitter and we've got one layer clear. So, you know, be pretty generous with the activator here, and then what you're going to do is you're going to wait anywhere from 10 to 20 seconds. It's really going to depend on the speed of your liquids, the thickness of your clear, all of that stuff, but this right here is what we're trying to avoid. And I actually wish I could say I did that on purpose for demonstration, but I didn't. I did not wait long enough. I just mistimed that. But don't panic if that happens to you the first time. We can fix it. All you need to do is go back and add a little bit more activator again, wait a few seconds, and then with a clean piece, not with that same piece, start pressing down. And you can see I get a little less the next time, and then I finally get my timing right on the third time. So if that happens to you the first time, don't panic. It's fixable. Just gently kind of peel it off, put on a little bit more activator, and push everything back down. So when I am doing this, I'm using pretty firm pressure here. Don't be shy, because at this point your clear is going to be semi-set over top of your glitter. It will be pretty firm, but it will still be gently movable. So if you push down with the baggie, you're pushing the glitter and the clear together flatter so that it makes a nice smooth finish like we've got here. You know, this may seem a little bit extra, but it can make a huge difference in the final outcome of your chunky glitter nails. It almost gives like a glass-like finish, and it just makes everything lay nice and smooth. And if you had any little bits at all that were sticking up, they will be pushed into submission by using this baggie. So this right here is what you're looking for. You want it to come up without peeling up any of the clear on top if you've timed it right. So, you know, keep working with it, test it with your liquids, and, you know, figure it out. But in theory, this is really what you want to happen. You want it to be just soft enough for you to be able to push things around, but not so soft that it's going to stick to your baggie when you're using it over top of it. Alright, so here's what they're looking like after we've finished all those steps. So as you can see, you know, they're never going to be quite as flat as they would maybe a solid, but as far as chunky glitter goes, that's pretty darn flat. And once we get a top coat over this, there's going to be zero texture as far as rubbing your finger over it. You won't feel it. It's all just kind of flat and meshed into the nail. Alright, so I'm just going to jump off camera. I'm going to file shape and buff these and then throw a top coat on, then we'll be back to take a look. All right, all finished up. So I'm desperately in need of some cuticle hydration. So I'm going to be using one of my newer ones from Scales of a Mermaid. It is a limited edition set for February, which is sold out. So this seems like cruel and unusual punishment to put it in this video. But it's called No I Love You More. And it's more of like a sweet floral. And I'm not great at describing scents, but it's definitely more of like a white floral. And it just has a little bit of sweetness to it. So it's really nice. So I don't know if they have plans to restock this or if that's it, but let that be a lesson to you. If you're interested in their limited edition scents, you better hurry up. All right, so take a look at how smooth and flat and non-textured that finished nail is, and it feels great too because you're not, I don't know, catching anything sticking up on things. It just feels really nice. And I really do think that this method helps the beauty of the glitter to really shine through because it's not really distorted by any kind of chunky, funky look. Alright guys, so in the videos in this series, I'm counting on you to give us some of your tips because definitely, we all have different methods that we use and you might have something fantastic that I haven't tried yet that I may absolutely love or somebody else might love. So if you have any tips for how you like to apply your chunky glitters to get them nice and flat and smooth, then please drop them in the comments down below. I would love to hear them. So if you're struggling with chunky glitters, I do hope that this method will be helpful to you. If you have any questions or anything else you want me to address, please make sure to leave those in the comments down below as well because I'm here to help. Alright, so that's going to complete this video, guys. So once again, if you have any other ideas that you want for this video series, make sure you leave them in the comments down below, or you can always DM me on Instagram. Either way works for me because I definitely want to make this a series for you. I want you guys to benefit from it. So that is going to complete today's video, guys. So I hope you did find it helpful and I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, it would help me out so much if you would leave me a thumbs up down below. And while you're there, if you have not subscribed already, I hope you will consider subscribing before you go. And don't forget that notification bell. We got new content coming every Tuesdays and Fridays at 2 p.m. Central. So as always, thank you guys so much for being here. I really appreciate each and every one of you. And I hope you guys have a fantastic rest of your day. And I will see you in the next one. Bye. Look at this guy. I was just sitting here cutting up rotisserie chicken for some soup, and Charlie's outside playing blissfully unaware. But it's like he can sense the chicken's presence and he's standing here waiting. He might think that because every time I cut up a rotisserie chicken, he gets a little bit, but I really don't know how when he's outside playing and blissfully unaware of what I'm doing in here, he somehow senses that I'm cutting up a chicken.